Yep. That's perfect. All right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm the president of Urban Core Development. Welcome here to the Coliseum Connections Project. This property was developed in 2019 as a partnership between Urban Core and the Oakland Economic Development Corporation. The total project cost was about $57 million, which was made possible as a result of some initial tax-exempt bond financing that was issued by the state, which was purchased by Chase Bank, tax credits by TCAC that were purchased by RBC Bank. Additionally, the state contributed $10 million of AHSC funding, which was critical to leveraging the $12 million that was put in by the city, $2.5 million that was funded by the county, and another $1.2 million from Commonwealth Multifamily Housing. I want to say that this project is unique in that it is 50% affordable and 50% market rate with all the tenants living together. And also, we did this project using modular housing. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. We're very proud that you all would come out to visit this site. And I'd like to turn the podium over to Mayor Schaaf. And again, thank you for coming to Coliseum Connections.
Good morning. We always love when Governor Gavin Newsom and our legislative leadership comes to Oakland, California to bring us good news. Oakland, California and the entire Bay Area are ground zero for both the problem and the solution. The problem is affordability, and that starts with housing. And the solutions are projects like this one. Affordable housing that is protected for our low-income residents at rents they can afford. Built on public property, close to good transit, using modern and efficient construction methods. This is what it's going to take at scale to bring California along on our quest to provide housing stability for all Californians. Governor Newsom, I am excited to find out which bills you will be signing here today in Oakland. We know that the legislative leaders behind us have been incredible visionaries in delivering some of the solutions to housing affordability that we so desperately need in Oakland, the Bay Area, and California. That includes streamlining the process to actually get buildings up faster. It means creating more resources, including impact fees, to finance for affordable housing. And it means addressing the production or supply problem. It is not only that we must protect our tenants where they are, convert existing housing to protected affordable like your visionary and successful HomeKey project, but we have to produce and build more units of housing. California and especially the Bay Area have a supply issue that cannot be underscored enough. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce to you the legislative leaders that are standing behind me, some of which you will hear from after myself. Right here from this district, our own Senator Skinner, Senator Becker, Senator Portantino, Senator Cortese, and then from the California Assembly, Assembly Member Chu, Assembly Member Holden, Assembly Member Grayson, Assembly Member Bryan, Assembly Member Bloom, Assembly Member Cooley, and Assembly Member Gabriel. We are so proud to welcome the legislative leadership from all corners of our great state who have flown in, barted in, trained in. Hopefully not too many of you drove in because, you know, VMTs. That you've been that you have shown this leadership and that you are going to celebrate this moment. I, as the mayor of Oakland, express my deep gratitude to your leadership on this historic day. And of course, someone who has been such an incredible champion for housing, someone who is a fierce regionalist, Assembly Member David Chu. Please take the mic.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf, and thank you for hosting us and for your tremendous leadership as an amazing local executive moving forward during this housing crisis. Today is a bright day for housing in California. I have to share that 6 years ago when I became chair of the Assembly Housing Committee, it was a fairly lonely experience because at that time, there was not the focus and the attention on housing as there is today. But I also have to share that today, with these incredible housing champions, not just our amazing legislative colleagues, but led by our governor, I don't feel so alone. And I also have to say I was worried at the beginning of this year, given the pandemic and the recession and wildfires, that we were going to lose focus. But part of today is about the fact that our legislature, working with our governor, did not lose focus on addressing the crisis of the day that entails housing. Now, I often say, as the governor and many of us, that there is not one silver bullet, one solution to addressing housing. It is all of the above. It is A plus B plus C. And this year, we move forward on many fronts. A, we move forward on investing record levels of budget toward housing, led by our governor, with our Senate budget chair, with all of us here. We invested $10.3 billion in affordable housing, $12 billion in homelessness, $5.2 billion in rent relief. That's A. B is what we're doing today. 27 bills, which reflects the diversity of issues within the housing crisis. And I, again, want to just thank my colleagues for their amazing diligence. We have bills to address affordability, density bonus, ensuring that we're streamlining, ensuring that we're moving forward an ADU agenda, ensuring that we are addressing impact fees, and so on, dealing with all aspects of this housing crisis. And then C, I want to thank the governor for proposing earlier this year that his administration have for the first time a housing accountability unit to enforce all the laws that we're moving forward. And I want to just say thank you. Apparently, AB 215, which is my bill, will help to expand and assert that authority by the Attorney General and HCD, the Housing and Community Development Department, to ensure that all of these laws that were passed are being enforced. But let me just close by saying the following. We know our work is not done. We stand here today because we know that housing is not just a bricks and mortar issue. Housing is about dignity. It's about jobs. It's about climate. It's about quality of life. And it's about morality. It's about the fact that every single one of us here today believe that it is our moral obligation as Californians to put a roof over everyone's head. And we're going to keep fighting until that gets done. And with that, it is my honor to introduce the amazing senator representing Berkeley and, of course, our Senate Budget Chair, Senator Nancy Skinner.
Representing Berkeley.
Hey, we're right here in Senate District 9, Oakland. And of course, if you are one of the wonderful people that gets to live in this amazing housing development, you also have great access to go and see our A's play. So, I'm really glad to be here. Assemblymember Chu, our Housing Assembly Chair, those were great remarks. And as Budget Chair, let me just mention one other budget thing that we did. Well, a couple more. So he mentioned our $12 billion to make sure that our unsheltered people have a roof over their head, and I 100% agree with him. It is our moral responsibility to make sure every Californian has a roof over their head and a bed to sleep in. And so we've put $12 billion, thank you, Governor, towards that effort over the next 2 years. And as Assemblymember Chu mentioned, the $10.23 billion for affordable housing, but also $2 billion for student housing, $500 million, which will get out into the communities this year. And that's for our community college system, our CSUs, and our UCs, because we also have a homeless crisis amongst our students. Now, the bills that the governor is signing today, and I always like to remind people, as legislators, we are so proud when our bills get through, and we're like, yeah, I got this bill through. Well, That's not the finish line. Just getting our 2 houses to vote for it, that's not the finish line. The finish line is the governor signing it. And we have a true housing champion with Governor Newsom, and witnessed by the 27 bills. But let me mention a couple of other things. The other thing that the budget did was provide the funding for our departments, HCD, that's our Housing and Community Development, and the other departments affiliated with it, to oversee this incredible funding that we have now put out into California to make sure that that housing gets built, that we're dependent on our cities. Much of the bills that are being signed are, and have already been signed, are more opportunities for people to build on their own properties or for developers to be able to build. But if the cities don't cooperate, then we don't get the housing we need. And so there's not only accountability in the bills that will be signed today, but there are new divisions within our Housing and Community Development Department that are going to be responsible for making sure that our homeless housing money gets spent and actually houses people, that our cities comply with these new laws and zoning that we have put into effect. And so there's been a great expansion in the state, in the different divisions of the state, with new staff, and we really look forward to having that partnership to make sure that those things that we've put on the governor's desk and that he is signing today actually deliver what is essential right now in California, which is more housing, more affordable housing, and more accountability so that we know that that money is being spent well. And the other thing I wanted to say is, you know, we are clearly acknowledging the incredible crisis that California faces because we have not built enough supply for decades. But what else has that done? We know that the climate crisis is real. We're feeling it now. We have our wildfires, we have our extreme heat and weather events. But part of the huge contribution to the emissions that cause the climate crisis in California is our dependence on vehicles. Now, we're doing a lot to change that. The governor has, we're going to not be buying fossil fuel vehicles in California as of 2035. However, right now, when people have to drive a long way, so if they can't live near where they work or where they go to school or where their services are, then they've got to be dependent on vehicles which spew climate-causing emissions. Projects like this, housing like this, and more housing in all of our urbanized communities is exactly what we need to address the climate crisis. So I want to make that connection because people don't always make that housing connection to the climate crisis. But this is real leadership in addressing California's climate crisis. And I want to thank the governor for his recognition of that, and all of my colleagues in the legislature for their recognition of that. And everyone who lives here, they basically, as Mayor Schaaf pointed out, they don't need to get in their car. They've got the Capitol Corridor here. They can go to Sacramento in the train. They've got BART right here. We've got our great AC transit bus system. So this is an incredible example of what we're trying to do in California, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the visionary for this and the real leader in our housing efforts in California, who is making our bills the reality today, and that is Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, Senator. Well, let me, this pretty remarkable group of folks behind me. So let me first and foremost just thank each and every one of them. You not only see this spectrum of leadership on housing here in the state of California, but you see it represented in every part of the state of California, representatives from Southern California, not just here in Northern California. So it means a lot to me, and I hope to all of you, to recognize not only their leadership, but to reconcile our collective responsibility to meet this housing crisis and this affordability crisis head on. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity here today to sign 27 of what will be 31 housing bills that the legislature has presented and afforded me the privilege of signing this year. It's a remarkable effort that they engaged in. It's an effort that was done during very challenging and trying times, and the Assembly member was absolutely right. There was a little bit of doubt, let's be honest, that folks had suggested, that doubt would pervade the legislature and legislative agenda because of the COVID crisis, that we weren't going to be able to accomplish the bulk of the work that we set out to do. Make no mistake, not only were we able to accomplish it, I think we were able to exceed expectations, not just with these bills that I'll be signing here today, but as was referenced, the unprecedented investment that we're making into addressing the issue of affordability in the state of California. $22+ billion. In fact, the senator mentioned the $2 billion of student housing. I appreciate that reference. That's not even included in the $22 billion. That would put us north of $24 billion to address the issue of housing and homelessness in the state of California. This is unprecedented in U.S. history. No state has ever endeavored to invest these kinds of resources. No state has ever committed to investing these resources with an actual strategy and plan to back it up. But I think on the basis of those that are assembled here today in the seriousness of purpose which unites us, there's an intentionality and a political will that, as David was saying, candidly was missing, even just a few years ago, to address this issue. And in many ways, the mayor understands this well. In the past, the issue of housing and homelessness, frankly, has been the responsibility almost exclusively of cities and counties. The state was nowhere really to be found. The ultimate strategy had to be advanced at the local level. Now, we still rely on localism. It ultimately, and I say this often, is determinative. And the state vision will be realized at the local level, but now with state support, the likes of which we have never endeavored to provide in the past. And that's the paradigm shift. That's what's radically changed in the last few years. Now, with that, I'm not naive. We're not going to be able to overnight change the trajectory of a state that for decades has been under-resourced in terms of its strategies and its intentionality in terms of housing development. We have Econ 101. You know, it's not complicated. A supply-demand imbalance. We're not building enough housing at all income levels in the state of California. And we recognize that we've got to make up for decades and decades of that gap and that neglect. And so that's what we're endeavoring to do. And so I'm proud today when I not only signed these bills, but when I signed the budget to advance the cause that we believe will provide upwards of 84,000 units of housing in the state of California. That's what we're backing up today, 84,000 units of housing in this package. What's significant about this effort, and Michael, let me just thank you for allowing us here and your remarkable project, because so many of the components of what we put out in these bills, what I'll be signing these bills, and in the budgets reflected in this project, modular housing, trying to find new strategies to lower the per unit cost of housing and housing construction, looking at surplus lands, a bill I'll be signing here today, an important bill. Thank you, the Assembly member, for bringing this bill to us. Creates a new housing unit, local surplus housing unit, not state surplus land, local surplus land, a new unit that will provide us more connectivity with the state and local government to take excess properties and convert those properties to higher and better use. We have the ability as well, because of legislation that I'll be signing here today, to look at the nexus between impacts and cost to construction. Impact fees are a big driver of local decision-making, costs, frustration, stress across the spectrum. And we need, I think, candidly, and this legislation provides for it, a little bit more transparency and a little bit more accountability as it relates to those impact fees, so we can address some of those cost factors and some of the abuses that sometimes we see in this space. And now we have legislation that will allow us to do that. And I'm grateful for the leadership of the Assembly and Senate of providing that bill and giving me this opportunity to sign it. We have the ability to advance an effort that we launched just a year and a half ago, and that's with ADUs. Remarkable group of bills that I had the privilege of signing almost 2 years ago. And now we're putting it to use. We're actually seeing remarkable success with our new ADU efforts, now we're backing them up with financing, another $100 million of financing, up to $25,000 to help individuals to finance the production and the conversion of ADUs all up and down the state of California. It was mentioned the climate commitments that the state is making, and we're really proud of those commitments. $795 million is being set aside. Again, this project representing that, this density around transit corridors, this connection, job housing, and linkages that provide less of an environmental footprint and provide us more upzoning and opportunities to address our climate and economic challenges hand in hand. And so we're putting real resources in that space as well this year. And so these bills represent a lot of hard work, a lot of give and take, a lot of interest groups, pro and con. I heard more sighs on that than anything. But a commitment, a resolve to recognize that our number one pre-existing condition in the state of California prior to the pandemic was affordability. And it remains our number one responsibility. It's the issue that defines more issues in this state than any other issue, the affordability crisis on housing in California. Period, full stop. None of us are naive about that. All of us recognize our responsibility to do more and do better. CEQA reform, density bonuses, workforce housing, not just affordable housing, a recognition housing investment at all income levels, a commitment to streamline process to address the time value of money, create more certainty, but also provide, in closing, accountability. And I really want to impress upon you the significance of that point. And I appreciate the Assembly member for his efforts to strengthen what we did together, all of us, by creating a new housing accountability unit, but to give it a little more heft, more teeth. And the bill I'll be signing, the Assembly member's bill, will do just that. This is unprecedented. The state has never focused on housing accountability. And trust me, it's not overwhelmingly popular. Just ask my friends down in Huntington Beach when we had to sue Huntington Beach because they weren't meeting their commitments on the housing element. We've got this thing called the RENA goals, which is really the state goals, all the local RENA goals aggregated together, come up with a unit. And by the way, in January, we'll be coming out with our state update in terms of the number of units that we are committed to constructing over this 6th RENA cycle. But we got to have accountability to back up those efforts. And we now have a bill and a new unit that Gonzalo and Lourdes and others that will be running those programs will have the privilege of putting together because, again, of this legislative effort. Look, I can go on, but let me just thank again the incredible leaders that are assembled here today. And I'll close by recognizing a few that are not here briefly, notably one, and that's the pro tem of the state Senate, Toni Atkins, who has just been remarkable in her resolve and commitment. I had the privilege of signing one of her bills as I signed Senator Skinner's bill at the same time to build on the incredible work she did with 330. Forgive me, I know sometimes we're talking to each other when you hear these AB this and RENA goals and all. I mean, none of this makes sense. I understand that. Hopefully 84,000 units does, and so that's why I wanted to focus on that. But I want to recognize her leadership, Scott Wiener's leadership as well. We signed 3 bills, 8, 9, and 10, that were controversial, challenging, but meaningful a few weeks ago. And then, of course, Senator Skinner's bill, and that represents those 4 bills with the 27 I'm signing here today, 31 efforts to move the needle on housing in the state of California. And with that, let me just quickly sign. I know you're doing the math. That was 1, 2. I'm only, I'll spare you all 27. I have the legislative members here that I'm going to hand these bills because they flew up, they drove up, they walked over. What'd they do, Madam Mayor? They BARTed? What do you call it?
BARTed, and they took trains.
They took trains.
The Amtrak stop is across the street.
I love it. So I want to get these bills in their hands to respect their work. So let me just, before Jason takes us away, this ain't a bad legislative year in the state of California. And with that, figure out which is yours. We're happy to take any questions.
Hi, Governor Newsom. Leslie Brinkley with ABC 7 News. Wanted just to follow up with a question about the eviction moratorium. There is a safety net for those who make under 80% of the median, but basically at the end of the week, there are going to be a portion of people who lose or owe a lot of money for the place they've lived in if they were affected by the pandemic. Are you concerned about those people closer to the median income who are going to be in a problem of affordability in housing in the next couple of days?
Yeah, we're concerned about everybody, but we're also very proud of some of our nation-leading efforts, and I think this is important to highlight. California has exceeded the goals set forth by the federal government and the Biden administration to distribute a minimum of 65% of all of our housing support for the round one funding by the end of this month. We actually have substantially exceeded that with 100% of the first round funding being obligated and or distributed. $1.69 billion has been obligated, meaning checks have either been cut or checks are on the way, which exceeds the entire allocation in round one and is actually $190 million of additional support from round two. Now, we recognize we have more work to do, but I want to acknowledge that work that has been done, which is meaningful. It's part, as the senator said, of $5.2 billion commitment, as Assembly member said, by the state. By the way, that's just a component of it. There's an additional $2 billion for utilities, water, electric, and gas utilities. We pay 100% of that if you've been directly impacted by COVID going back to April of last year through the end of this month. Now, more work has to be done. But you made a point that's an important point. We have protections post October 1st. We have the nation's strongest protections post October 1st. And while the moratorium expires, we still have protections for people earning, as you suggest, I think it's lower than what, 80% of AMI, what we refer to as area medium income. So lower income residents that still are afforded those protections if they seek support or their landlords seek support. And they are eviction protections that deny any court action through a period that extends through March 31st of 2022. Now, the mayor is eager to talk about her efforts, and she will certainly, it's her city. We afforded that in one brief moment, but I want to just reinforce this point, that those post-moratorium protections are in place. It remains our responsibility, and this is my baton, local government's responsibility to continue to be vigilant in terms of distributing funds for those earning above 80% of area median income that have been impacted by this pandemic. The state administers a portion of those $7.2 billion. It does not administer all of it. Increasingly, we're distributing more and more of it as many cities are now turning over that responsibility. State, LA, being a recent example of a city that decided to allow the state that privilege. But with that in mind, let me provide this mic to a practitioner of this issue who's eager to share the good work she's done on this issue.
I just wanted to provide an important local clarification. Oakland, California is one of the very few local jurisdictions where the eviction moratorium is not expiring. The way in which Oakland adopted its local eviction moratorium is concurrent with the local declaration of emergency, which is still in place. And so while the state's moratorium is expiring, in Oakland, California, tenants are still protected by an eviction moratorium. It's so important. I literally had my staff calling the Mercury today. Local reporters have got to know that difference. In Oakland, the eviction moratorium is still in place and will continue until the Oakland City Council declares an end to the local health emergency. Just thank you for letting me clarify that.
No.
Right now, it's all of Alameda County. Are you
Senator, why don't you say that, because that needs to be reinforced as well. This is why you're over here. I'm going to sit back.
Just in case, the Alameda County eviction protection is not as strong as Oakland's, but if you live in Alameda County, you do not have to face the September 30th deadline. And some of the other cities have further, like Berkeley, but in Alameda County at least, you're not, that September 30th deadline won't kick you out.
Nancy.
And all of this is important because there was the same conflation and confusion when the federal rules no longer applied, that states like California have protection, state rules, but you still have local efforts. And so appreciate that clarification and that distinction. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Hey, good morning, Governor. Melissa Colorado with NBC Bay Area News. If you've driven around Oakland and in the East Bay, you'll see a lot of empty lots, and some of those empty lots are supposed to be affordable housing sites. And our investigative team recently did a story just about, the delays. We know that construction costs are going up, and forgive me, I'm trying to, here we go. The California Debt Limit Allocation Committee has said that they have received so many applications for these affordable housing projects that the state now has to pit the projects against each other in a fight for funding. And typically what ends up happening is that the projects with the cheapest construction costs are the ones that move forward. So tell me a little bit more about these bills and how that's going to handle these problems.
Well, let's, why don't we have the author of the legislation on the surplus land, and then either Lourdes or Gonzalez can talk a little bit about the funding issues, which are absolutely challenging, and that's why we put an unprecedented amount of additional resources in the pot this year. But nonetheless, the need is indeed great. But where's, there you are, Cortez.
Thank you, Governor. And the governor's referring to Senate Bill 791. He spoke about that earlier in his comments, which creates a new unit, a special unit in HCD at the state level to assist local governments, including school districts, who have been sitting on those lots of land that you see, those opportunity sites, if you will, perhaps without the expertise, perhaps looking at oversubscribed tax credits and not being able to get in the door, perhaps being too small to have their own housing department, especially in the case of a school district or a local agency, a small agency. So this unit will, as the governor said, partner with local governments on a voluntary basis. Those who are interested in getting the full faith and credit of the state of California behind their efforts and the expertise of HCD behind their efforts to supplant the need to try to stand up or create their own housing department or their own expertise in these tough times. So we expect this will build on a bill by Assemblymember Rivas that recently called for the mapping of all those properties, so the state now knows where all of those properties are. HCD can look at that and immediately identify opportunity sites, sites in need, or the sites that those local governments and local agencies are talking about right when they make that first call to the state. So it's, again, another brick in the wall, and I'm sure it'll lead to a lot more efforts like this one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Lourdes Castro Ramirez, Secretary of California's Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency. And to the governor's point, in terms of, into your question about projects that have been in shovel-ready status that have not been able to secure a tax credit allocation, in this year's budget, as was mentioned, $22 billion, $10 billion going for affordable housing. The $10 billion includes $1.7 billion in what we're calling the California Housing Accelerator Program. These dollars will enable projects that have already received approval from the California Housing and Community Development Department to fast track and to go into construction. We were just here with Director Gustavo Velasquez 2 weeks ago in Oakland announcing the Housing Accelerator Program. HCD will begin to accept applications by the end of the month this week. And the turnaround in terms of making determination of awards is within 30 days. So we expect Governor, his charge is, as you know, the folks responsible for implementing and executing, it's to move with urgency, to move with a sense of responsibility, and that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you.
Still a lot more work to do. We put $1.75 billion to unlock the opportunities to develop housing that's already been approved. We put an unprecedented amount of money in our tax credit program, loan programs, but again, $10.3 billion. I'd like to see those dollars continue to increase. And as long as I have the privilege of being in this office and the economy continues to support our efforts, we'll continue to see more resources in that space.
And Governor, if I may, you're in Oakland where our school board just recently approved a vaccine rule for all eligible students that's not going to go into effect until 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Should the rest of the state follow Oakland and LA's lead?
Well, we mentioned last week, Dr. Galley, I followed up a few days later that we are in discussions. We have 1,050 school districts. You referenced one, an important one, Oakland Unified, and of course LA and others are moving in that direction. We're working very closely with their staff to understand the logistical challenges and hurdles. There are issues that we are working through that are unique and distinctive by region. And so we're in that process of adjudicating a larger consideration. As we said, it's on the table, but no announcement to make today.
KCBS Radio. This is going to be your out of left field question, but I'm sure you've heard that Andrew Wiggins of the Golden State Warriors is not getting vaccinated, and that's causing some problems.
But, now I have. That is out of left field. I was thinking, I was more worried about someone's thumb. Is it Belt's thumb or is it forefinger? Thumb, yeah, that's to me serious issue. But this one sounds maybe important, but not as serious as Belt's.
My question for you is are you concerned about the message that sends? For such a high-profile sports figure not getting vaccinated, a lot of people follow what he's doing.
I just, honestly, I don't know enough about it. So if I did, I would happily express an opinion. Let me just say this. I'm of this opinion as governor of California that has the lowest case rate in America, that's administered more vaccines than any other state in America, that I'm proud of our nation-leading efforts. Just shy, 83.8%, 84% of all eligible Californians, 12 and over, have received at least one dose. That's impressive, though we have more work to do. And I think it's important for people in positions of power and influence to express support for these efforts, as it has allowed us to lay claim not just to the lowest case rates, but to a substantial reduction in hospitalizations and ICUs all across this state over the course of the last many weeks, as well as provided a little bit more confidence for consumers and for businesses and for parents that our kids could get safely back into school. All these things are connected, and so I think it's important to continue to remind people that these vaccines not only save lives, but they have a direct impact on our ability to turn the page on this pandemic and get our economy moving again and getting our kids educated in person without any consideration of their health risks and associated challenges of a new likely variant to occur if we are not able to succeed on continuing our vaccination efforts. Forgive the long-windedness, but that's all I could comment on, just not specifically on the individual.
Governor Carla Marinucci from Politico. I'm told I'm the last question. This goes to a question related to housing, and that's livability. And that is that the FBI this week came out with new crime statistics in California, a 31% jump in homicides over 2020. And the FBI statistics show the murder rate up here more than the national average. And of course, Oakland has already exceeded the homicide rate. So when you're talking about building housing in areas that have been have had crime problems, including low-income areas, what are you specifically going to do to address for the residents of places like this, that they're going to be safe? What specifically measures are you going to take?
Well, I'm going to have the mayor answer that question. As a former mayor, I appreciate the enormity of weight of responsibility as a former mayor to address the issue of public safety. I will note, and it's important to note, that 31% roughly mirrors the national statistics. The murder rate went up 29+%, almost 30% nationwide, 31% in California. So it's in line. Our violent crime rate actually did better than the United States. Our violent crime didn't go up, went up 1%, didn't go up nearly what the rest of the country experienced. So that's an important fact, that this is shared all across this country, this concern of what occurred in 2020 in particular, and continues to occur. That's why, working with the legislature, I was very proud to support an effort, initiated and supported an effort to provide $200 million of local grants for community-based organizations and partnerships for proven strategies to address the issue of violence reduction and crime reduction, evidence-based strategies. I should put that in perspective. Last year, and I believe Senator Skinner, was just $9 million. This year we committed $200 million to that effort. The mayor and I, you may have seen us whispering a moment ago, it was on the important topic of public safety. We had communicated a few weeks back, maybe it was a month or so ago, around the importance of getting more support from the federal, or rather state government. I committed to that publicly, not just privately, to get the CHP to support efforts, but in a respectful and responsible way, not led by the state, but led by the well-established cultural competency that is defined by local policing, particularly here in Oakland. And I'm pleased that hundreds of hours of support have been provided through the California Highway Patrol to support their local efforts over the course of the last many weeks. We want to continue to partner as necessary with cities and counties, but I will note this, as it relates to your question of connecting the dots. You want to address the issue of crime and violence. It's the opportunity for people to live at all income levels across their differences. What I love about this project is it's literally an antidote to the issues of crime and violence. You heard Mr. Johnson reference the fact it's 110 units. 56 units are for folks making less than 80% of area minimum income, but the other half are for people at market rate. I don't want to see people segmented in any way, shape, or form. I want people living together and advancing together across every conceivable difference. This is a project, 110 units, demonstrably advances that cause. And I think that cause builds trust, builds relationships, and builds opportunity for community. And at the end of the day, it's about developing more community trust. Fundamentally, isn't that what public safety is really all about? And so projects like this, I think, demonstrably advance that cause. And that's why we're here highlighting the success of this project and other projects of its type that we hope to promote with the bill package that I signed here today. With that, I want to thank everybody. I'll spare the mayor from answering any more on that topic. Thank everybody for being here, and congratulations.